Om Shri Gurave Namo Namaha. Hello everyone, welcome. In this video we're going to explore what it means to walk the sacred learning trails, and that shamanic mindset to journey. Before we begin, as we often like to do here at Tree of Totems, we always begin with a sense of giving offerings and giving of prayers. And with that, I want to offer you a very special poem by Mary Oliver that we may bring our hearts and our minds into the material of which is calling us and courting us into deeper understanding. And here it is. Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is all I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? What else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver. Home. Well, welcome. Welcome to exploring here the sacred learning trails. It is said a great spirit has provided us many learning trails on this journey through this life that we call in the shamanic traditions the dreaming. And indeed, wherever you look, there is a different trail offering its own teachings. And each of those learning trails, they have their own ways of learning them. They have their own etiquette, their own mindsets. And you can see that this is a great gift to us in this world, that we have these many learning trails to follow, to apprentice ourselves to. And here, with Becoming Nature-Wise, we are on just one of many sacred learning trails. Just one of many. And the sacred trails, they're different than others. We travel them differently, and our goal is different than other learning trails because it's actually less about learning. It's less about learning and it's more about remembering. It's more about remembering. See, long ago, it is said that Creator gave the original instructions to the people with how to live as part of the great web of life in a good way. In a good way. My teachers in India call these the original understandings. I've heard Aborigines of Australia speak into these as the original song lines. And I've heard the Sand Bushmen of Africa listen into them, and they speak to these as the original trails to spirit. See, it's shared that at one point, mankind suffered a great wound. And in this wound, the people got amnesia. They became orphans in the world that is their own home. And ever since then, we've been on a slow path where we've been on the slow path of remembering, where by having the right experiences and listening into the right stories and being part of the right conversations, we stir the remembrances of these original understandings. So this is a slow path of remembering. And it's where you remember through having the right experiences, the right conversations. See, there is this intrinsic knowledge within each of us that we are an extension of the earth, that we are an extension of nature, and within us is already the wisdom with how to live in a good way within the great web of life. And what has become known to us who have walked many of these sacred trails is that when you step onto one of these trails, the trail, it comes alive. You discover that the trail itself has its own consciousness, it has its own personality and mind, it has its own intelligence, it has its own greater knowing of what it is. And when you walk this path long enough, you realize that the trail, once you've stepped onto it and you've earned relationship with the trail on which you're walking, that the trail itself will adopt you. It tends to you with great care. And it only gives you privy to this greater knowing that it is in those moments that you need direction. So we hence learn not to push the path. We try not to control our learning experience. We try not to consume it. But instead, we try to move into a space where we trust the path and we let the path itself guide us. We give it respect and acknowledge that the trail on which we are on is alive. And hence, rather than trying to master it, we enter into conversation with it. We enter into conversation with it because we can see that our learning isn't really about the gaining of information. It's not about the havingness of it. We see that the movement of our own maturing into new understanding is always a bit about conversation. We're in a conversation. And through the process of conversation, we mature into new understanding. Now, this may seem strange for those who haven't walked many sacred trails, but you'll experience it here with becoming nature-wise. And I think David White has it where he says the conversational nature of reality. See, what we're sharing here is that this path is not a linear path. It's not a path of checking off steps. It's not a path of mastering techniques, nor is it learning to have information. Right? This path that we're on reveals what's ready to be experienced to you. And it reveals these things to you through your experiences. By walking the path, having the direct experience of walking the path. And through your experiences, you have a deepening of the knowledge within you. You experience a sense of remembering. And that's very different than memorizing, right? See, this path is framed through nature connection. It's framed through the etiquette of learning from the plants, learning from the animals, from what we call the sacred others, right? It's apprenticing directly to them rather than learning of them or learning about them. It's learning from them. It's framed through these ancestral and indigenous eyes, a path. What it really is, it's a path of being claimed by the living earth. And so these wisdoms and these learnings, right? These learnings are framed through nature connection. And you'll receive these learnings by journeying into nature, of going to your sit spot, of just being in your backyard, of tuning into your senses wherever you are, listening into the bird sounds and their vocalizations and feeling into what are they speaking, what are they sharing happening in your environment. By engaging our senses, we enter into what we call the dreaming, where everything comes alive and begins to speak to us. And in that, you can read the signs. And you can allow the path itself to guide you, lead you, and show you the way. Right? So we call these the unteachable learnings. We call these the unteachable learnings because the majority of what you learn here will likely only be known to you and the mountain, to you and Robin, or you and elk, to you and your backyard. See, it's a personal journey, and they become known to you by walking your unique path, by listening, asking questions, not to just satisfy the need of an answer, but rather to ask questions to find new questions so that you may be guided deeper into this journey. What we're exploring here is how do we walk the sacred learning trails, and how this differentiates from just any other type of learning trail, of like learning a college course or just learning about plants. Here we enter that sacred learning trail, and what you're learning now is how to walk that path and let go of the pressure and the rigidity that we often find in our Western learning trails that tend to try to push us. It's that adversary of trying to collect information and conquer something. It's about consuming. Here on the sacred learning trail, we will set that path aside, that etiquette, and instead we come into this element of relationship, play, curiosity, this sense of courtship. So what you want to do is you want to become a spirit tracker. You want to listen, look, smell, sense the tracks and the signs. And a sacred learning trail is really navigated in a very unique way. You become a tracker, and you trail the tracks and signs offered to you within each moment. You follow them. And when you follow them, they'll lead you into the experiences that awaken new understandings, that awaken new connection and abilities within you. See, nature and spirit is courting you. Nature and spirit is courting you. The deeper wisdom and understandings are leaving you clues. They're enticing you into the next level of relationship. We're being led back into the sacred circle of belonging. Hence, the way of learning on a sacred learning trail is about adopting a mindset of curiosity, wonder, and most of all, playfulness. It's a sense of playfulness. See, it's being part of this flirtatious courtship, this flirtatious dance. It's falling in love with nature. We're falling in love with nature, right? We're being invited to savor the conversations and experiences. It's adopting an excitement of not knowing. Right? It's adopting an excitement of not knowing and being guided further into the unknown territories within us. as well as without us in the land. Mm. So when you become a spirit tracker, you begin to become awake within the dreaming. That's what we call it in the shamanic tradition. We become awake within the dreaming. We talk more about that in the shamanic perspective sections of Nature Wise. See, it was long been known, right, that sometimes the moon would come down to our world in disguise as a deer. And when hunters would trail the tracks of deer through the forest, they respected that they may be trailing a god in disguise. They respected that they may be trailing a god in disguise. Imagine moving to the world with that sense of magic in your mind. See, the tracks of spirits, they're hidden in plain view. They're hidden in plain view, and they're discovered in the most practical ways of discerning the plants and the animal tracks, of listening to the bird vocalizations, of seeing the movement of nature that's all around you. See, it's coming close in and paying attention to the details. It's coming close in and paying attention to the details, and within them, you gain entrance to another language, that spirit language that reveals the deeper learnings, waiting patiently for you to discover them, waiting patiently for you to discover them so they may awaken within you and stir the greater remembrances you are now ready for, because you've walked the path, you've earned entrance into these conversations by showing up. So what you're learning here is that this sacred learning trail, becoming nature-wise, is not meant to be followed like you're learning a course of study in college. You're being offered the old ways of learning, which is a kind of courtship whereby you allow the journey to lead you, guide you, and reveal the new layers to the degree you show up and walk the trail in front of you. All right, so it's this courtship. That makes it really fun. And why this is important is because these kinds of trails have a trickster energy about them. They're full of this coyote trickster spirit. And so if you try to be rigid and think you're going to get behind on the course studies, that you need to be rigid about your sit spot and other things, what you'll likely do is end up suffocating the life out of your unique trail. Because we're each have a unique trail we're going. And if we try to apply this in this really rigid way, we could suffocate the life out of it, because the path, this trail that you're following, it's alive, it's conscious, it's speaking with you, it's inviting you in to these conversations, leading you deeper into these greater inquiry. See, what you want to do is merely continue to show up to the best of your abilities, while letting the whimsical spirit of nature guide you. Now, in a very practical sense, this means do your sit spot as much as you are able. Do your sense meditations, throughout the day. Have those triggers that just dial you in. You anchor into extending your senses out to be part of the environment, to sense like which direction are you facing? What is the movement of the breeze? It's tracking the movement of nature and the animals and spirit around you, right? It's listening to how you're being pulled to explore. Like, what's catching your eye? What is moving you, calling in your heart? As we do this nature-wise program, we're going to be learning about plants and bird language. We're going to be learning about tracking. We're going to learn about these indigenous and ancestral mindsets. What's really calling you in your heart? Listen to where you're being pulled and allow yourself to be pulled. and follow those clues. And also allow space for yourself to rest. Allow space for you to rest. And rather than trying to memorize information and memorize how you like identify a plant or what have you, instead focus on experiences. What type of experience will help you know a plant rather than memorize a plant? Track your own stories. What is the story of you meeting a plant or an animal or a bird? When you know the story, it helps ground you into that context. Speak to your path. Your path is alive, it's conscious, it's speaking to you. So speak to it, and you'll find that it begins to speak back. And in this, you'll acknowledge that your path is less about learning and maybe even less about remembering. It's just a conversation that is moving you through the process of your own understanding. I love it. Now, in the next section, we're going to explore the learning cycles and how to honor each stage of your learning hoop cycle that you're in, so you can track the movement of your own journey, track the movement of your own learning and understanding of where you're at, so you can honor each of those stages in a good way. Again, if you have any questions, definitely message me or schedule a mentoring session, because I am here to support you in this. Om.